Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Eddie Marcus here one more time. I want to see if I can share something with you, tell you something about how the spirit works sometimes, and show you how the devil can use trickery to deceive sometimes. And in order for me to tell you this, I want you to know that I'm telling you what I know. That means this is what I've learned through my own experience. And that's good enough for me. And I'll share it with you. You know, I've always wanted to live a successful life. Everybody, I believe, personally, want to live a successful life. And that means doing whatever they want to do, being satisfied. Not necessarily doing the same thing somebody else is doing, but what they want to do. And I always believed that I would have that, that I would be able to achieve that because as I was growing up, I usually could do, whatever I set my mind to, I believed I could do it, and I went at it like I could do it. And in most instances, I did it. And so I never had any doubt about it. And as far as my future, it was going to be like entertainment. I was going to be one of the best entertainers America had ever known. And I mean, I was really going to do that. Sidney Poitier was my guy. When it come down to acting, he was number one back in those days. And so I saw him as that. And as I was growing up, James Brown and Michael Jackson, they had that going, but I never thought I would be able to match these guys. But I'd always be able to entertain. It might be doing a little singing. But it would be enough for me to live as successful entertainers want to live. But now, I grew up in the South. I grew up on a plantation before I moved to the little city, which was nothing else but a plantation. You know the South story and black people story. But I still never knew that I was suffering so much as far as poverty is concerned, because when everybody's going through the same thing and you're a child, you don't know what's going on, especially if you don't have a television to remind you of what you're missing. Especially when you just had a radio, and usually when you're talking on radio, you're just listening to music and listening to talk. And sometimes you're not trying to envision too much because you're kind of limited about what you can envision based upon what your exposure limitations have been. Now you start getting Sears Roebuck magazine and Spears, what is that, Spiegel. Yeah, you start looking at those magazines, you start looking and you start seeing stuff that you, wait, where this come from? Or when? You start dreaming, you know what I mean? You start dreaming. So this is how we all move from low life to better life. And so end up getting out of college, married. Been following entertainment all my life. I've been on the stage. But I got married to a young lady who was ahead of me in school. I'm a freshman, she's a senior. So I passed on to my sophomore year? Yeah, sophomore year. And that's our graduation. And so we had these few years separate where she was one place and I was at another. And so I decided rather than go to Hollywood, I'd spend some time with my wife. And so went on to Chicago, started working, got a decent job, you know what I mean? Real decent. Did some moonlighting, entertainment at night, did disc jockey, and doing my own show. Had to keep that touch. But working for the Veterans Administration with vets coming out of Vietnam and some who didn't come back, and so you have to deal with their survivors, or maybe just some of their dependents, and it puts you out there in the community, and you know a lot of stuff about Chicago, and and especially when you come talking about the black people went to the service to make some money, because life is tough. But you got to go back in the ghetto. You start seeing these things different than you did when you were a kid. As a kid, it didn't matter too much because everybody was like that. But now you've been through life and you see what's causing the stuff. You're social scientists and sociologists. You say, "Wait, something is wrong with this," and yet nothing is fixing it. You think about your growing up. You think about your college years, your schooling. You think about politics. You think about nothing that's happening. And then you think about those old people that raised me, who told me that this was wrong, who told me that certain things were, oh man, they were old folks. They didn't tell me what the young folks were saying. They told me what they had been through. And that stuff was sticking. So I found out, my mind just got so into it, I made a decision that I was going to have to do something about this. And I was reminded by Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Now, there are many people have done much more or just as much. But these two I could connect with. They showed me, they told me that something could be done. They told me that there's a price to pay to do wonderful things. And something said, what could be more wonderful than liberation of the human race? You know, it's not just about a vote. It's about telling people the truth so they can be alive. So, you know, if you got to die, I couldn't think anything better to die for. So I made that decision. I didn't know what to do. I knew I was going to start doing something. And I had to understand the poor today, I had to be of the poverty today. So I quit working at the Veterans Administration and started working, washing storefront windows, minimum wage, you know. And so that was not the life that my first wife bargained for. So she asked for a divorce and we separated. We divorced. Now, went through some changes. That's for a different time. But I ran across another wife, a lady who is my wife. And she had a different story. The story is that I'm not trying to get on top of the world. In fact, I'm not even trying to be looking for a job because I got a job. My job is to give the information about what God really is about with the human race as much as I possibly can, wherever I can. And that's what I'm committed to. And, you know, I met her in the church. She was kind of young. She's about 9 years younger than I am. But I guess back in those days, still had something going for me. Because a lot of young women, but I couldn't take up with them because I knew I was going to get old, like I am, old. I'm going to be looking old. And she's going to be 10 years younger than me, looking good. And I know how men who want to be men, you know, they look at stuff, they exercise, they look good, they're handsome men. And I could just imagine handsome men walking around my wife, much younger than I am. She couldn't help but say, wow, these niggas sure look good. And I couldn't blame her. So, you know, I know some women might like it, and might, what they say, I don't think about what Will Smith, the terminology they use, but I can't think of it. And anyway, maybe I thought about that because if it was reversed, what would I have done? Anyway, my understanding of it is that if we were to be together, I do God's work, and God would bless us money-wise as far as our surviving and stuff like that. And I said that because now my wife, I'm saying some stuff, she might not like it, but when you want to tell the truth, get a message out, you have to tell it like it is. My wife had just got out of college, and she moved here in a different state, and she was working 2 jobs to make under $15 an hour. She was working one job, make a certain wage, work another job, make a certain wage. You put it together, and it would come close to $15 an hour. But you needed $15 an hour or less. Or you always needed more. But working 2 jobs, so you know that's tight. And most folks would say, well, why did you get a job to help her? Why didn't you get a job to help her or whatever? I just told you why. But at the same time, I did go and wash some dishes at a university just to help out, making $6 an hour. So I did do that for a while. And then I had to go back because I needed to travel and spread the news about this great gospel that I've been given. And so, but my wife has carried the ball for 40 years because I've been out here doing this more than 40, but she and I have been together doing this for about 40 years. And now I said that I do God's business and God would bless us. So Did God bless us? I don't know. I put it this way. Of course. Because she was making less than $15 an hour. I don't know what that was making. What, probably 20, 30,000 a year, something like that. Or then if God bless you and you start making 40,000, or you make 50 or 60,000, or 70,000 or more, or 100,000, then you say God is blessing us. But then you find out, say, well, if you get in situations, because that's what it always gonna find yourself in a situation. If you making $30,000 a year, you're gonna have some problems. You make $100,000 a year, you're gonna have problems. You make $200,000 a year, you still gonna have some problems. But if you don't know it, if you can't imagine, if you can't think, you can't see it. You say all you can say well, let's say I was working. Let me use me for an example. Let's say she was blessed to make 100,000. Now I'm thinking God blessed her. Then there might have been a time when she thought that too. But after a while, she started thinking, "Whoa, I did that. I made that money. You didn't do anything for the money." I'm not saying she's saying this, but you know that's usually what happens. I made this. You didn't do anything. So all of a sudden, it's not God blessed us anymore. It's I took care of this. So when you start thinking like that, you got a problem. Or you to take God out of the situation, and somebody said, "Well, God was like letting you to ride." Okay, well, what? Now, I'm not gonna go with that what have stuff, because be that as it may, I want you to know what happened. What happens there? At first, it was beautiful. It was wonderful. She was a altogether different kind of person. But living in this society, going through the changes of this society, after 40 years of going through this change, and then all of a sudden what you have is a new creature, a new creator, a new one who said, "I'm skinny because I don't want to be around there putting all this weight on, saying I'm eating a lot, I got access to engage in when other folks are starving." Okay, then all of a sudden you must put that aside because you know what I mean. So you change. Are you more compassionate? Are you more loving? I don't know. I can't say you are. I can't say you aren't. But then you ask the individual. The individual can respond to that. My point is, there are things, there are challenges, there are tests that you will encounter over and over again. And these tests are either to break you or to make you. Break you or to make you. So, what I'm saying is when you run into these things, you're going to have to make a choice. Do you throw in the towel of doing what God has said do? Or do you say, "Well, I got to live"? If you say, "I got to live," then you made a fool out of whoever else was supporting you. Excuse me. Anyway, what I really want to say to anybody is that if you feel a certain kind of way, it's real to you. And it's okay to be real to you. You become a challenge and a test to those that you encounter, because you give them the opportunity to see truth and fake, to see truth and phony. Not that, I'm not trying to say that, because when you phony and don't know it, it's just the fruit of what you've been exposed to. Hey, that's that. It's just that there comes a time when people don't eat that fruit anymore. That fruit becomes something of the past. You know, there have been a few things you just got rid of that eat anymore. So this is what I'm talking about. Anyway, I think I just want to leave it there. And in fact, I really just wanted to say this to myself so I can make this record. And this is not for me to produce for the public. This is for me to just go back sometime and listen to it, to remind myself of what